What happens when the ninth house does not lose rhythm but starts to burn? Not just discomfort, not just instability, but heat, sharpness, inflammation, burning in the thighs, stabbing lower back pain, irritated sciatic pathways, and a body that starts feeling inflamed from the inside out. This is where you must understand the ninth house at a much deeper level. Because the ninth house is not only about meaning, destiny, higher wisdom, and long range direction. In body mapping, it also governs the hips, thighs, tailbone area, sacral region, sciatic nerves, and pituitary-linked hormonal functions. So when Pitta rises here, the disturbance does not first appear as dryness or depletion. It appears as heat, sharpness, inflammation, and irritation in the lower movement axis. And that is the key distinction. Vata destabilizes. Pitta inflames. Pitta is hot, sharp, penetrating, and inflammatory. So when Pitta enters the ninth house field, it acts on the sacral region and sciatic nerve pathways through burning redness, heat, sharp pain, muscular irritation, inflammatory tightness, and excess warmth in the lower torso and pelvic zone. That is exactly why the slide shows this cluster so clearly. Burning sensation in the thighs, inflammatory hip pain, redness or heat in the sacral area, sharp stabbing lower back pain, inflamed sciatic nerve, tightness in the hamstrings, muscle irritation, increased body heat in the lower torso, and excess sweating in the pelvic region. Now I want you to notice something important. These are not random symptoms. They all belong to one logic. Too much fire moving through a region that governs support, locomotion, and directional movement. So instead of a cold, unstable pattern, you get an agitated, overheated, sharp, reactive pattern. The nerves are not merely irritated because they are dry. They are irritated because they are inflamed. The muscles are not merely weak. They are tight, reactive, and hot. The pain is not vague. It tends to be sharp, penetrating, or burning. That is classic Pitta expression. Now let us reason through the planetary symbols shown in this slide, Mars and Sun. This combination is extremely appropriate for a ninth house Pitta pattern because both planets carry strong fire signatures, but they express that fire differently. Let us begin with Mars. Mars governs muscles, blood, heat, dryness, inflammatory reactions, fevers, rashes, ulcers, lacerations, acute complaints, and sharp force conditions. Mars is one of the clearest indicators of inflammatory intensity in the body. So when Mars influences the ninth house body zone, I immediately think of irritated sciatic pathways, inflammatory hip pain, sharp sacral pain, hamstring tightness, muscular reactivity, and acute flare-ups in the lower back thigh axis. Mars does not usually whisper. Mars pierces. Mars aggravates. Mars inflames. Mars pushes a condition into active expression. That is why with Mars in this field, the pain often feels more urgent, more stabbing, more heated, more reactive. The person may say it flares, it burns, it gets sharp fast, or the whole lower region feels inflamed. That is Mars language in the body. Now add Sun. Sun is also Pitta, but Sun expresses Pitta differently from Mars. Sun is linked with heat, sight, intelligence, bones, stomach, feverish states, overheating, and a general drying burning principle. So when Sun participates in a ninth house Pitta pattern, I do not only think of acute inflammatory irritation, I also think of systemic overheating, excess heat in the lower torso, reduced tolerance for heat or exertion, inflammation that builds with intensity, and a more centralized fire quality in the whole pattern. Sun makes the fire more central. Mars makes the fire more aggressive. That is the difference. So if Mars gives the stabbing and reactive component, Sun can add the radiating heat, inflammatory load, dryness through heat, and reduced coolness in the system. Together, they create a field where the lower movement axis becomes overheated, irritated, and less forgiving. Now, let us bring the ninth house meaning into this, because the ninth house is not just a body region. It is also a house of guidance, future direction, faith, principle, and the path one is moving toward. So what happens when Pitta rises here? Direction becomes heated. The person may not simply feel lost. They may feel driven, frustrated, impatient, reactive, and unable to move forward peacefully. This is a very important distinction from Vata. Vata in the ninth house may produce fear about direction. Pitta in the ninth house may produce agitation about direction. The person can become inwardly overheated around purpose, belief, or long-term movement. There may be irritability around delays, frustration when the path is blocked, intensity in conviction, and a body that mirrors that same sharpness in the hips, sacrum, thighs, and sciatic field. That is why the body mapping and the psychological symbolism match so well. The lower axis says, movement is inflamed. The inner life says, my direction is charged, heated, and pressured. Now step back and see the full pattern clearly. Mars gives inflammatory force, muscular irritation, acute flare-up, sharpness, and penetration. Sun gives heat load, radiating fire, dryness through overheating, and stronger systemic Pitta tone. And in the ninth house field, that can show up as burning in the thighs, inflammatory hip pain, sacral heat, stabbing lower back pain, irritated or inflamed sciatic pathways, hamstring tightness, excess sweating in the pelvic region, and a general sense that the lower torso is carrying too much fire. This is where healers and astrology students need to get very precise. Do not flatten everything into there may be Pitta. That is not enough. Ask, where is the heat concentrating? What is being inflamed? Is the pain burning, sharp, stabbing, or reactive? Is the muscular tissue irritated? Is the nerve pathway hot and inflamed rather than dry and unstable? Is the person's direction in life also becoming intense, impatient, or pressured? That is real interpretation. And there is one more layer here that matters. The ninth house includes pituitary-linked hormonal mapping, and Pitta by nature can overheat regulatory systems. So when this fire rises strongly, it may not stay confined only to pain. It can begin to affect sleep reduction, thirst, excess sweating, inflammatory stress response, and generalized internal heat patterns that coexist with the local sacral sciatic irritation. That is why the slide is wise to note that classical Pitta increase can include burning, thirst, yellow discoloration, and reduced sleep. Once the fire is strong enough, it rarely stays local. It tends to radiate. So the deeper teaching is this. When Pitta disturbs the ninth house, the body does not merely struggle to move. It struggles to move coolly. The person may still have drive. They may still have direction. But the movement becomes inflamed, pressured, and costly. That is the real signature. The body says, I can move, but it burns. I can push, but the tissues are irritated. I can continue, but the pathway is inflamed. And psychologically, the life pattern may echo that. I know where I want to go, but I am too heated in the process. That is a very different teaching from Vata. Vata says, I cannot stabilize. Pitta says, I cannot cool down. And once you understand that, your chart reading becomes far more exact. You stop giving generic statements. You start identifying mechanism. You start seeing whether the lower axis is disturbed by dryness, by heat, by stagnation, or by depletion. That is the level of rigor this work deserves. Because the body is not just giving pain here. It is revealing the quality of the imbalance. And in this case, the quality is unmistakable. Heat, sharpness, inflammation, irritation, and excess fire in the ninth house movement corridor. That is the real ninth house Pitta signature. If this kind of deep Jyotish Ayurveda reasoning helps you see charts more clearly, subscribe and stay with this series, because this is exactly the level of analysis healers and astrology students need to develop. And if you want a personal reading on your own chart for health patterns, soul path, relationship dynamics, or life direction, you can book a consultation through astrovagmi.com. I will see you in the next one.